Why there are more homeless men than women. Another reason is that homeless women are also prime targets for trafficking or murder. As long as they meet certain physical and mental requirements, it doesn't get easier than kidnapping someone who no one will realize is gone. One point I haven't seen mentioned is related to military service. A lot of homeless people are veterans. Many of these folks have experienced trauma from their service time. When they leave the military, these men mostly are put into the world suffering from PTSD. The PTSD some suffer can make holding down a job difficult. Women are also more likely to stay in homes with abusers or worse conditions due to the fear of homelessness for themselves and/or their children. You're talking about homelessness in general, but what you're describing is a specific form of homelessness called sleeping rough. Homelessness also includes people who are given a place to sleep at night but don't have their own homes. There are two main reasons why homeless women are more likely to be provided shelter. The first is that women are violent at lower rates and are on average less capable of causing as much harm if they become violent, so they will be provided shelter out of generosity at correspondingly higher rates. The other side of the coin is that homeless women are extremely vulnerable and will be provided shelter as a byproduct of sexual exploitation and abuse by pimps. Consider that most of the prostitutes on the street you see likely do not have a stable housing situation. In other words, the answer can in part be a rhetorical question. Why are there more female prostitutes than male prostitutes? Human trafficking and sexual exploitation. Women do not have the physical strength to fight back most times, so they are extremely vulnerable to being taken advantage of once they become homeless. Also, women have wider and stronger social support networks. I have offered friends of mine places to stay when they need it, and know they would do the same for me. I think men tend to be more isolated and less likely to ask for help. Women will also offer to do domestic duties in exchange for a place to stay. Even in very poor areas, you see women who will cook, clean, do laundry, and child care in richer homes. The value in these services means she will have a roof over her head. All of the reasons you listed are valid reasons. Often there are more homeless shelters specifically for women, and there isn't as much shame for them to ask for help while at risk of homelessness, or if they are struggling from mental health addiction that leads to the homelessness. I think all the things you're suggesting seem accurate. I'd also suggest a few more ideas. Men are more likely to have substance abuse issues than women. Women are more likely, I think, to find themselves in dangerous, but different situations like prostitution, sex trafficking, and domestic violence. A lot of people end up in this because of a short bout of homelessness, and as bad as it is, often seems like the only option. Men can find themselves victim to this too, but there are a lot more predatory men preying on women than there are women preying on men. I think because of the threat of sexual violence, more people are open to helping women and more women are open to receiving help. It is socially acceptable for women to accept help in this situation. That said, these are wild generalizations. Everyone has their own story. I also notice that women who don't have family or friends to turn to and who really don't want to end up in a homeless shelter are more likely to hook up with a partner, man or even woman, if the lesbian has a lot of support to offer, even if the partner wasn't their first choice, than to be homeless and lonely. Because women are physically weaker than men and can be targeted for sexual assault. To paint it in a better light, women are helped more by shelters. To paint it in a worse light, women have a hard time surviving as a homeless, i.e. they are dead. Dead people can't be homeless. Probably a bit of both, and therefore, fewer women are homeless. Women have something they can exchange for shelter: sex. It's a lousy option, but it's an option for a lot of them. I'm going to assume you're talking about in the US men are twice as likely to develop addiction. Addiction is the leading cause of homelessness in the US. Women are more likely to find someone who will allow them to stay with them in return for sexual favors. You'll also find that most homeless shelters have rules. You can't enter the shelter drunk or under the influence of drugs. They might also require you to attend self-care classes or societal classes to prepare to get a job or better yourself. Many people choose not to live under those rules or decide that they don't want the authority over them or the religious influence, as many shelters are run by Christian organizations. I think men are more likely to be violent criminals, so it might mean people are more wary about giving them a place to stay even if they know them. Post-release from prison is a very vulnerable time for becoming homeless. There are going to be fewer people who will feel comfortable having a strong, potentially violent man stay with them compared with having a woman stay with them. Women are more likely to have their children with them too, which makes their situation more urgent for family and for services too. I know one reason, and it's not a happy one. Bluntly, women can and sometimes are forced to trade sexual activity for shelter. It's easier for a woman to find a person who will trade in this fashion than it is for a man. These arrangements are usually exploitative on one end or the other. I am familiar with a homeless woman in my neighborhood. If you saw her, you would never guess. She looks made up, always a handbag, she pretends to wait at bus stations, etc. Homeless women are in danger, they hide it. Also, don't forget that for women, there is always the option of entering a transactional relationship with a man. Easier for an unemployed female to find someone to move in with. A guy with no job and a drug habit has the romantic prospects of a dead cat. At least with people who aren't homeless. Far more men than women have criminal histories that limit their housing options. Women are going to be a lot more able to trade sex companionship for shelter than men. There are additional women's shelters that aren't available to men. Additionally, a number of women in that demographic will stay with men or their dealers in a promiscuous way.